The hall smelled of dust and old parchment, the kind of smell that had comforted Miriam, the quiet librarian, since the first day she stepped into the archives. But today, that comfort was stripped away, replaced by the sharp sting of humiliation. Dr. Everett Carroway, the celebrated Egyptologist, with a silver mane and a sharper tongue, stood at the center of the seminar room, his voice booming with confidence. His audience of students and fellow scholars laughed along with him as he waved an ancient papyrus in the air. "A librarian?" he sneered, suggesting that a fragment we've all examined for decades, contains a secret? Next, she'll tell us Cleopatra herself left behind a treasure map scribbled in invisible ink. Laughter echoed, loud and cruel. Miriam sat in the back, clutching her notes so tightly that the edges crumpled. Her heart thudded in her chest, but she refused to lower her gaze. Everett had no idea that she had seen something he had not. No one did. For weeks, Miriam had been poring over the faded papyrus under a specialized ultraviolet lamp. While others catalogued it as yet another funerary hymn, she had noticed faint marks in the margins, tiny symbols nearly erased by centuries. To the untrained, they were scratches. To her, they were coordinates. "Sit down, miss," Everett barked at her now. "Leave discoveries to those who understand them." The words cut, but they also ignited something. In her mind, she could still hear her late father's voice, a schoolteacher who had filled her childhood with stories of Cleopatra. "Never underestimate what the world overlooks, Miriam. Greatness often hides in plain sight." Her chest burned with the memory. She swallowed her anger, raised her hand, and spoke with quiet resolve. "Dr. Carroway," she said, steady though her throat trembled, "you mock me, but the symbols on that papyrus do not match hymn annotations. They align with cartographic notations from the Ptolemaic period. They mark a location south of Alexandria, near the Nile Delta." A hush fell, brief and electric. Then Everett's booming laugh shattered it. "Cartographic notations? From you? I suppose next you'll claim to have found Cleopatra's lost chamber? Absurd." The room erupted again. A few students shook their heads, smirking. Others glanced at Miriam with pity. But Miriam sat straighter, her eyes never leaving Everett's passes. She knew what she had seen. The coordinates haunted her dreams, whispering secrets of a hidden place history had long since buried. That night, alone in the archives, she unrolled the papyrus again. The ink shimmered faintly under the ultraviolet glow, like stars against the parchment's faded brown sky. Her finger traced the path southward, toward the edges of ancient maps where desert met river. Her pulse quickened. Cleopatra's final resting place had eluded the greatest of archaeologists. Could it be that she, a librarian, dismissed as irrelevant, held the key? A whisper of doubt crept in. What if Everett was right? What if she was chasing shadows? But then she remembered the stories of how Cleopatra had defied Rome itself, wielding intellect and charm as her weapons. Would such a queen not ensure her secrets were buried where only the observant could find them? Miriam clenched her fists. She would not let arrogance silence her. The laughter of that seminar room still echoed in her ears, but beneath it now was a stronger sound, her father's words, her own heartbeat, the undeniable call of history waiting to be uncovered. She gathered her notes, rolled up the papyrus, and whispered into the empty archive. If you're enjoying this story of justice and hidden strength, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to find out how a simple act of prejudice turned into the most valuable lesson of Dr. Everett Carroway's life. And with that, she made her choice. She would follow the map herself. The desert was waiting. The library, after hours, was a cavern of silence, every aisle a darkened canyon of forgotten wisdom. Miriam sat hunched over her desk, the papyrus spread out before her beneath the ultraviolet lamp. The soft purple glow painted her face in ghostly hues, reflecting the weight of what she carried. She adjusted her glasses, eyes darting to the faint notations she had discovered in the margins. They weren't random. They had a rhythm, a consistency that sang of intention. One by one, she compared them against the faded copies of Ptolemaic maps she had pulled from the restricted section. Her heart leapt when the shapes aligned, like puzzle pieces snapping together. A single line drawn centuries ago curved toward a set of coordinates that no scholar had ever marked. South of Alexandria, near the swampy stretches of the Nile Delta, where most archaeologists avoided digging due to flooding and instability. "This is no accident," she whispered, scribbling in her notebook. Her mind reeled back to her earliest days in the archives. She had once been told that librarians are caretakers, not discoverers. Their role was to protect what was already known, not to search for what was hidden. Miriam had accepted that for years, until the night she first noticed the faintest trace of ink curling around the edge of this papyrus, like a whisper beckoning her closer. The symbols were almost invisible to the naked eye, but they pulsed under ultraviolet light, as though the scribe had known that only someone with patience, someone willing to look deeper, would ever notice. A sharp sound startled her, a knock against the glass of her office door. "Miriam?" She flinched, quickly dimming the lamp. It was Daniel, the young intern who often lingered past hours. His eyes were curious, flicking to the rolled papyrus on her desk. "You're here late again," he said. Miriam forced a small smile. "Just finishing cataloging." But Daniel's gaze lingered. He was different from the others, quiet, observant. She hesitated, then decided to test the waters. "Daniel, have you ever wondered why Cleopatra's tomb has never been found? Not once, despite centuries of searching?" He leaned against the doorframe, arms folded. "Some say the desert swallowed it. Others claim Rome destroyed it. What if it wasn't destroyed? What if she wanted it hidden, left only for those who cared to read between the lines?" Daniel tilted his head. "You're saying you've found something?" She swallowed, pulse racing. Confiding in him was a risk. The last time she had shared her theory, Everett had turned it into a public humiliation. But Daniel's eyes weren't mocking, they were curious. Slowly, she unrolled the papyrus again, revealing the faint marks. "Look here, notations. They don't match funerary hymns, they match cartographic keys' directions." Daniel leaned in, brow furrowed. "This looks like a path." His words struck her like lightning. Someone else could see it too. Relief washed over her, quickly replaced by fear. If others discovered what she was doing, Everett would find a way to claim it as his own. She rolled up the papyrus swiftly, clutching it like a secret child. "You mustn't tell anyone," she said, her voice fierce. "If they know, they'll bury it under ridicule or steal it outright." Daniel nodded, though hesitation flickered in his eyes. "Miriam, if this is real, it changes everything." She knew it did, and that was exactly why it was dangerous. As the night stretched on, Miriam lingered in the silence long after Daniel left. She ran her hand across the fragile surface of the papyrus, tracing each symbol like a promise. Cleopatra's whispers were etched in these margins, and now they were calling her into the desert. The arrogant voices of Everett and the scholars rang in her ears, but they were fading against the steady hum of something far stronger: hope, purpose, destiny. For the first time in her life, Miriam realized she wasn't merely a caretaker of history. She was about to become its revealer. By dawn, the Nile Delta sprawled beneath a pale sun, its marshes and reeds stretching like an ocean of green and gold. Miriam's modest rental car rattled along a narrow dirt path, the papyrus carefully tucked in her backpack. Every turn, every ripple in the road felt like a pulse, a heartbeat echoing the thrill and danger of what lay ahead. She had spent the night cross-referencing her findings with every historical account she could access: Roman records, Egyptian chronicles, even Greek anecdotes that mentioned Cleopatra's elusive escape from political enemies. One theme emerged consistently: the queen had left clues for those clever enough to follow them, leaving deception and misdirection to protect her final resting place. Miriam paused at a fork in the path, pulling out the papyrus. The symbols seemed to shimmer in the morning light, as if guiding her hand. "South?" she confirmed, toward the stretch of delta that the local guides called the Lost Marshes. Few dared to venture there. Flooding was frequent, and the terrain notoriously unforgiving. Her mind flickered to Everett Carroway, whose laughter still stung. He had dismissed her, mocked her intelligence, her intuition, and yet here she was, alone, trusting a fragile papyrus over centuries of arrogance. The irony was sweet. Though it brought no comfort, this journey would demand more than courage. It would demand skill and endurance. Hours later, she reached the edge of the marshes. Tall reeds whispered secrets in the wind, their rustle mingling with the distant call of birds. Miriam clutched the papyrus to her chest, the directions etched in invisible ink now blazing like a beacon in her memory. Stepping carefully, she waded through knee-deep water, feeling the soft muck pull at her boots. Every sound, every shift of reeds, made her heart race. The map indicated a change in direction here, a subtle shift in alignment with the ancient Nile channels. It was precise. Cleopatra's path had been deliberate, her hiding place carefully chosen to escape notice. A sudden thought struck her. What if she wasn't the first to follow this path? Countless treasure hunters had combed these wetlands. Many had vanished. Miriam's stomach tightened. She had no choice but to press forward. Guided by intuition and centuries-old ink, hours blurred into sweat and exhaustion. By late afternoon, she stumbled upon what appeared to be a small mound, almost imperceptible beneath the reeds. Her breath caught. The papyrus indicated precisely this formation, a marker, a threshold. Carefully, she cleared the overgrowth, revealing a stone door embedded in the marshy earth, its surface engraved with symbols matching those on the papyrus margins. Her fingers trembled as she traced the etchings. A combination of hieroglyphs and numbers formed a puzzle, a protective lock placed by a queen who had outwitted emperors and armies. Miriam's pulse quickened. She could almost hear Cleopatra's voice in the wind, whispering, "Only the vigilant shall enter." Her hands worked deliberately, matching symbol to symbol, rotating the sequence she had deciphered over weeks of research. One click, then another. Dust fell, the stone groaned, and a narrow crack formed along the threshold. Miriam's heart raced. She had reached the point that would decide everything. If the chamber existed, she would know within moments. If not, all of her preparation, all of her courage, would be for nothing. She pushed the door slowly, the ancient hinges resisting with a low, echoing groan. The gap widened. A rush of stale, cool air spilled into the sunlight, carrying a scent of incense and age, of history untouched. Miriam peered inside. Darkness stretched for several feet, but beneath it, the faint glimmer of gold and carved stone promised the truth she had risked everything to uncover. Cleopatra's whispers were real. Her tomb was waiting. Miriam's boots crunched softly against the sandy floor of the chamber as she stepped inside. The air was cool, heavy with the weight of centuries. Her flashlight revealed walls covered in hieroglyphs, delicate and precise, each one a brushstroke in the story of Cleopatra's final days. Her heart pounded. This was real. She had done what countless scholars had failed to accomplish. But even as awe filled her chest, doubt gnawed at her. What if Everett Carroway's mocking words were prophetic? What if, despite her discovery, the world refused to accept that a humble librarian could rewrite history? Her hands trembled as she documented the inscriptions, her notes meticulous, every stroke a defense against disbelief. The hieroglyphs told a story of strategy, survival, and power. Cleopatra had not merely been hiding her body. She had encoded her knowledge, leaving behind a trail only the observant could follow. Miriam realized that these markings were a personal testament, a queen speaking across time to those willing to listen. As she explored, she uncovered the first treasure chest, a gold-trimmed container filled with intricately crafted jewelry, each piece glinting like captured sunlight. She gasped, careful not to disturb the fragile artifacts, recognizing the historical magnitude of the find. The chamber's other secrets lay beyond a second stone door, partially collapsed but intact. Hours passed as she meticulously navigated the tomb. Every corner revealed fragments of history, a ceremonial headdress, scrolls preserved in resin, and carved reliefs depicting Cleopatra in moments of both triumph and vulnerability. She paused frequently to sketch, photograph, and note, knowing that if she rushed, she risked losing critical context. Then came the moment of revelation, a mural depicting Cleopatra herself, holding a small map in her hand, the same symbols Miriam had seen on the papyrus. It was a confirmation beyond question. The queen had deliberately left instructions, ensuring that only someone patient and intelligent enough could reach her resting place. Miriam sank to her knees, overcome with emotion. The reality of her success was staggering, but the absence of recognition stung. Would the academic world accept her findings? Everett's voice seemed to echo in the chamber, ridiculing, dismissive. She clenched her fists, feeling the familiar fire of determination rise within her. A sudden rumble startled her. Dust cascaded from the ceiling as the chamber settled. Her flashlight flickered. She realized she was not entirely alone. Others had found the entrance, drawn perhaps by the same whispers of history. Someone or several people could be nearby, waiting to claim the glory she had earned. She pulled herself together, scanning the shadows. The sense of imminent intrusion heightened her awareness. Her mind raced. She could take only as much evidence as she could safely transport, or risk it being lost forever to thieves or skeptics. Every decision now carried weight not just for her, but for history itself. As night approached, she made a plan. She would return with proper documentation and trusted colleagues, those who would honor the discovery, not mock it. But deep down, she knew the chamber's existence alone was proof of her insight and perseverance. Outside, the Nile's waters reflected the fading sun, shimmering with quiet mystery. Miriam took a deep breath, feeling the power of the past and the courage of the present intertwine. She was no longer merely a librarian. She was a guardian of Cleopatra's legacy, a witness to secrets long hidden from the world. The following morning, Miriam returned to the Nile Delta with a small boat and a determined resolve. The reeds whispered in the wind, guiding her through the marshes as she carefully retraced her path from the previous day. Every step was deliberate. Every shift in the soft, wet earth reminded her that this journey was not merely physical. It was a test of patience, intellect, and courage. As she navigated the narrow channels of the delta, her mind replayed the events of the past weeks. The laughter of Dr. Everett Carroway still echoed, but it had changed in her memory. No longer purely mocking, it had become a challenge, a reminder of the stubborn arrogance she had to overcome. Her fingers traced the papyrus tucked safely in her bag, the faded symbols now vivid in her mind. They had led her this far, and they would guide her to the heart of the tomb. Hours of careful maneuvering brought her to a small, hidden embankment barely visible above the water. It matched the contours marked on the papyrus, a natural threshold guarding what lay beneath. Miriam tied the boat to a sturdy reed and stepped cautiously onto the muddy ground. Her boots sank slightly, and she paused to steady herself, aware that the wrong move could mean slipping into the swampy water and losing everything. She approached the stone door she had discovered the day before. Time had not been kind. The surface was slick with moss and the occasional trickle of water, but the hieroglyphs remained, faint yet defiant. Miriam knelt, brushing away the dirt and debris to reveal the symbols she had memorized. Each one was a key, each one a test of her observation and patience. As she worked, she thought of Cleopatra, not the distant queen of history books, but the strategist, the woman who had outwitted emperors and preserved her secrets with meticulous care. Every detail of the chamber reflected a mind that anticipated the unworthy and rewarded the vigilant. Miriam felt a connection across millennia, a silent acknowledgement between seeker and hidden ruler. Her hands moved with precision, aligning the symbols exactly as she had deciphered. A deep, resonant groan echoed through the marsh as the stone door shifted. A narrow crack formed, releasing a rush of stale, fragrant air that carried the scent of age and incense. Miriam's pulse raced. The threshold to Cleopatra's chamber was open, just as the papyrus had promised. Inside, the tomb revealed treasures that surpassed her wildest expectations. Gold and jewels glittered in the dim light, reflecting hieroglyphs etched into the walls that told stories of battles, alliances, and victories. Miriam moved carefully, documenting each artifact, knowing that every object was a piece of history that scholars had long sought but failed to uncover. Yet amid the wonders, a sense of urgency pressed on her. The papyrus hinted at deeper chambers, concealed passages that held the queen's most guarded secrets. Miriam's breath quickened as she pushed aside fallen stones, revealing an inner door partially concealed beneath layers of rubble. The carvings were more intricate here, each line a testament to Cleopatra's intellect and foresight. She paused to steady herself, recognizing that what lay ahead was not merely a discovery, it was a reckoning. Her path was fraught with risk, both physical and professional. If she succeeded, she would rewrite history. If she faltered, she risked losing the truth forever. With a steadying breath, Miriam began to clear the passage. Every stone removed, every symbol aligned, brought her closer to the heart of Cleopatra's hidden world. Outside, the Nile shimmered in the afternoon sun, silent witness to a journey that blended courage, intellect, and the relentless pursuit of truth. Miriam's hands trembled as she pushed aside the final stones, revealing the threshold to the inner sanctum. The massive stone door was carved with a series of intricate symbols, unlike anything she had encountered in the outer chamber. Each hieroglyphic line was precise, deliberate, as though Cleopatra herself had anticipated centuries of neglect and curiosity alike. She traced the carvings with her fingers, committing every detail to memory. This was more than a tomb, it was a message, a puzzle, a legacy. A sudden chill brushed her spine, and for a moment, she wondered if the queen's spirit lingered in these walls, testing the worthiness of those who dared to enter. The stone groaned as she shifted her weight, pressing against it with all her strength. Slowly, it began to move, scraping against the wet sand beneath it. Miriam held her breath, counting each second, each squeal of the stone echoing through the narrow passage. And then, with a final resistant click, the door opened. Inside, the chamber revealed itself in a muted glow from the sunlight filtering through cracks above. Miriam's eyes widened at the sight. A collection of treasures arranged meticulously, each artifact telling a story. There were golden amulets inlaid with lapis lazuli, ceremonial crowns etched with the symbols of the Ptolemaic dynasty, and delicate scrolls preserved in resin. But more astonishing was the central sarcophagus, its lid decorated with Cleopatra's visage, serene and commanding. Miriam approached reverently, noting the artistry, the precision, the care with which it had been crafted. This was the resting place of a queen who had shaped the course of empires, hidden away for centuries from the world's eyes. Her thoughts drifted to Dr. Everett Carroway, whose arrogance had tried to overshadow her efforts. She smiled faintly, realizing that this moment, this triumph, was more than a personal victory, it was a lesson in humility. Knowledge and perseverance mattered more than status, more than ridicule, more than titles. As she explored further, Miriam discovered compartments within the sarcophagus, containing papyri, detailing Cleopatra's strategies, alliances, and personal reflections. Each scroll was a testament to a mind that had defied time, politics, and enemies alike. She carefully documented every detail, her excitement tempered by a deep respect for the queen's genius. A faint sound echoed behind her, a distant rustle, like footsteps moving along the stone floor. Miriam stiffened. She was not alone. Shadows flickered at the edge of the chamber, and a wave of fear mingled with adrenaline. Whoever had followed her could jeopardize this discovery, claiming the glory she had earned. Steeling herself, she whispered under her breath, "No one will take this from me. Not today. Not ever." Her fingers tightened around her flashlight, illuminating every corner as she mapped the inner chamber. Every artifact, every inscription, Every hidden compartment was a testament to Cleopatra's foresight and to Miriam's perseverance. Finally, she paused at a wall covered in hieroglyphs depicting the queen's life and reign. Miriam ran her fingers along the carved symbols, feeling a connection across centuries. Cleopatra's wisdom had endured. It had been preserved for those vigilant enough to see beyond the surface. And now, Miriam was part of that legacy. The inner sanctum held its secrets, but the truth was undeniable. History had been rewritten, and the humble librarian had achieved what the most celebrated scholars had failed to accomplish. The chamber's treasures seemed to shimmer with a light of their own, as if Cleopatra's spirit approved of Miriam's diligence. Every artifact, every scroll, every etched wall told the story of a queen who had outwitted empires and preserved her secrets with meticulous care. Miriam felt a profound reverence as she moved deeper into the chamber, realizing she was walking through the very heart of history itself. Suddenly, she heard voices echoing faintly from the entrance, a mix of shock, disbelief, and hurried steps. Miriam froze, her mind racing. Everett Carroway. He had discovered her secret path, and now approached with a cadre of assistants, likely intending to claim the discovery as his own. Her pulse quickened, but she refused to panic. She had anticipated this. The chamber's layout, the hidden compartments, the subtle traps designed by Cleopatra herself, they were all part of her safeguard. Miriam quietly maneuvered to a side alcove, remaining hidden. Through the narrow slit of light, she saw Everett step inside, eyes wide with astonishment. His arrogance faltered, replaced by something she had never expected: awe. The other scholars were scrambling, unable to comprehend the scope of the tomb and the treasures it contained. Everett's voice trembled, a rare vulnerability breaking through his usual confidence. How did you find this?" Miriam stepped from the shadows, papyrus in hand. "Patience, observation, respect for what the world overlooks," she said softly, each word deliberate. The room fell silent. Everett's gaze shifted, disbelief turning into grudging recognition. Miriam felt a surge of quiet triumph, but tempered it with humility. This moment was not just about proving her critics wrong. It was about honoring Cleopatra's legacy and preserving the truth. She guided the group to the sarcophagus, pointing out inscriptions, hidden compartments, and artifacts that confirmed the queen's strategies and personal reflections. Every revelation left the scholars stunned, their previous laughter replaced with whispered astonishment. Miriam watched as Everett, usually so commanding, knelt before a golden amulet, his pride humbled by the reality he could no longer deny. As the sun dipped below the Nile's horizon, the chamber glowed with a warm, ethereal light. Miriam documented every artifact, every inscription, knowing that this discovery would change the course of Egyptology forever. But beyond academic recognition, she felt something deeper, a profound connection to the past, to Cleopatra, and to the hidden strengths that had guided her here. Later, outside the tomb, Miriam watched Everett confront the reality of his own arrogance. He turned to her, a mixture of shame and admiration in his eyes. "You've done what none of us could," he admitted, voice low. I underestimated you." Miriam smiled, not with gloating, but with the quiet satisfaction of someone who had trusted in their abilities and followed the truth. History, she realized, was not about who shouted the loudest or held the highest title. It was about those who listened, observed, and acted with courage. Cleopatra's chamber remained untouched, a testament to the queen's brilliance and Miriam's unwavering resolve. And as the first stars appeared over the Nile, Miriam knew that her journey was only the beginning. The world would learn of Cleopatra's secrets, yes, but the lesson for those who had mocked her was far more personal. Humility, respect, and recognition of hidden strength are what endure long after arrogance fades. Weeks later, the world had begun to stir with whispers of Miriam's discovery, though she remained careful to release details gradually, ensuring the integrity of Cleopatra's tomb remained protected. The Nile Delta, once a forbidding stretch of marshes and reeds, had become a place of quiet pilgrimage for a select few historians and archaeologists who approached with reverence rather than entitlement. Miriam sat at her desk in the library, the familiar scent of parchment and ink surrounding her. Outside, the city moved on, unaware that beneath the sands lay treasures that could rewrite the understanding of an empire. She carefully organized her notes, photographs, and sketches, methodically documenting the tomb's contents for posterity. Every artifact, every hieroglyph, was a link in a chain that spanned millennia, a bridge between Cleopatra's genius and humanity's curiosity. Everett Carroway had returned to the academic world a humbled man. He publicly acknowledged Miriam's role, crediting her patience, intellect, and courage in uncovering what he had once deemed impossible. His lectures now carried a subtle, if begrudging, lesson in humility, and his students watched in awe as he recounted the story of a librarian who had done what no Egyptologist could. Miriam often thought of the quiet moments in the tomb, the smell of incense, the glitter of gold, the weight of history pressing down around her. Those experiences had changed her. She had always believed knowledge was power, but now she understood it was also responsibility, reverence, and courage. The arrogance of others had only strengthened her resolve, teaching her that the pursuit of truth required both patience and humility. At the library, she held small seminars for students who dared to dream beyond their station, sharing stories of hidden knowledge and unseen strength. Each session carried a subtle moral. Greatness is not always loud. It often whispers in the quiet, overlooked corners of the world. She emphasized observation, persistence, and integrity, weaving Cleopatra's story as a guidepost for those who sought their own paths. The tomb itself remained under her careful watch, catalogued but largely untouched, a sacred space where history spoke in its own voice. Scholars who approached with humility were granted insight, while those driven by ego learned to respect the lessons of patience and observation. Miriam had become not only a discoverer of secrets, but a guardian of wisdom, bridging past and present with quiet authority. And so the moral crystallized. Arrogance may mock, skepticism may belittle, but diligence, insight, and courage unveiled truths the world might otherwise overlook. Cleopatra's legacy endured not just through her reign, but through those who honored her intelligence and foresight. Likewise, Miriam's journey had proven that even the most underestimated individuals could achieve the extraordinary, rewriting history not through force or fame, but through quiet brilliance and unwavering determination. As twilight settled over the library, Miriam gazed out the window, the Nile reflecting the fading sun. She whispered a final thought to herself, one that had guided her from the first hesitant observation to the revelation of a queen's resting place. If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel to discover more stories about how extraordinary people turn humiliation into triumph. History had been rewritten, lessons had been learned, and the humble librarian had forever altered the narrative of Cleopatra's world.